Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I'll talk with interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest today is Rachel Howell, hostess of the OutSpoken podcast. Welcome, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. For those that don't know anything about you, you want to just tell us a little bit about your background? Who are you?
So I am a Generation Z, 23 years old. I'm a pastor's daughter. My mom and dad adopted 9 children, and they adopted all of their children, and they have 9, and I'm the youngest of the 9. Born and raised in Washington State. I've never lived anywhere else. I was homeschooled for most of middle school and all of high school. We've lived on about 10 acres, about a 10-minute drive outside of town my whole life. So very kind of grassroots, farm life type situation, very conservative family. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, so I just started a podcast. It's on Anchor is where I record it. It's called OutSpoken, and I wanted to start it to just kind of talk about kind of like what you do, just kind of current events and going on today, but from the perspective of a kind of a young adult in America. Sometimes I feel that being a young adult and being a conservative and being African American, I'm kind of a statistical anomaly. There's not a whole lot out there like me. So just kind of wanted to give my opinion on some things in the podcast and also bring in some information as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think most people assume if you're Black that you are a liberal, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess you're probably a fan of Candace Owens.
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
You
Yeah.
think she's going to run for president eventually?
I would hope so.
Okay.
I would probably vote for her if she did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how long have you been in podcasting now? It just started recently, is that correct?
Yeah, so I started kind of halfway through, sort of late last year. And the original podcast I had planned and the original podcast I had started was more about farm life and just kind of raising animals, because we have lots of animals. But then as I kind of saw the need for information being out there and letting people know that they're not alone in their opinions, I just kind of decided to majorly switch gears, actually. So I've been doing it for about 6 months, but I just started the new subject matter, I guess you would say, just last week. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you are going to have guests? You're going to interview people?
I'm gonna try. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. I really enjoy doing this. I get to meet a lot of cool people like you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun.
So what advice would you give to someone who is considering getting into podcasting?
Don't be afraid to say what's on your mind. That is partly why I called it the Outspoken Podcast, is because I plan to remain true to myself. I'm not out for ratings. I'm not out for, shares, although that would be great. I am out to say what's on my mind and get things off my chest, and just kind of spread the truth as far as information goes. So anyone who's wanting to get started, just remain true to yourself. Don't let people talk you out of your opinions, and don't let people put you down for sharing your opinions.
Yeah. Very good. Now that's me. I do it for a hobby. I enjoy
Yeah.
doing it. I love meeting new people, and I can say what I want to say, and I let people
Yeah.
say whatever they want to say, and it's good for all of us, and it's fun, and I don't care if I get 10 viewers per episode or 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
It is
Yep.
what it is.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite podcast that you listen to or watch?
I actually checked out, I think it's called Be Hero. Gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. I actually just joined these guys like on Friday night for their podcast, and the guy's name is Tom, and he talks about a bunch of different stuff. He actually, the subject that we talked about on Friday night was just about horror films and stuff like that. But one of the other guys on there, the one with the Be Hero podcast, will review things like which kind of whiskey is better. They'll kind of compare things. They'll go Mac versus Chrome. They'll go PlayStation versus Xbox, things like that. So I enjoy those kinds of things. But I haven't really had a chance to listen to a whole lot of them yet. So I'm still kind of putting feelers out that way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you like to talk about politics and current events.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, what about this thing that's happening? As you know, last summer, a lot of people did a lot of protesting, and sometimes they would block roads and sometimes they would get ran over. And
Yeah.
now there's actually a few politicians around the country trying to get legislation passed to make it pretty much okay to run over somebody that's protesting in the street. So what do you think about all that?
So, first of all, I think protesting is one of the most sacred rights that we have been given. We have it, but I choose to say we have been given as opposed to we have. Um, Protesting is one of the most sacred rights that we have been given in America, in my opinion, because there are countries where to this day it is frowned upon and illegal actually to speak out against the government in some places in the world. So we need, if we lose the right to protest, or if we give up the right to protest, then it's the beginning of silencing the voice of the people. So in the Constitution, we've been given the right to peaceably assemble to make our voices heard. So if you are blocking the streets, it's a protest is only as safe as its most radical participant, right? It's only as safe as its most dangerous participant. So if you have someone who is willing to break the car windows and pile onto the car with people or children inside, for me that's where it kind of reaches a gray area, because you are in I don't know how to say this, you're acting emotionally at that point, because you're expecting someone to share in your opinion and share in your cause, which is not a bad thing, but you can't force it on them. So as far as making it legal to run over them, I think that's also a gray area, because if I'm driving, I have a 6-year-old niece and a 4-year-old nephew. If I have them in the back seat with me and I'm driving and there's protesters climbing on my car, I'm going to think about my niece and nephew first and the protesters second. If I'm by myself, then I'll probably just, I might I might call the cops. I might call the cops and see if I can get some help. Um so I think as far as their right to be out there protesting is something that we need to uphold and something that we need to cherish. But I also would say they need to be careful how they are protesting, because with violent behavior, you might actually turn people off to the cause of your protest. And that's something that's counterproductive. They're only going to focus on, oh my gosh, they were protesting and they lit this car on fire. That's the only thing people are going to focus on, as opposed to, gee, well, what were they out there protesting for in the first place? What were they trying to say in the first place? So I think they can lose a lot of ground if they're not careful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I'm like you, I agree with peaceful protesting. I've done it myself.
Yes.
So it's a
Yes.
good thing, but when you start damaging property and you start physically assaulting people or even bullying people, that's
Hmm.
gone too far. That's
Yes.
gone too far.
Yeah.
And I can see where a driver, if they're in a car, like you said, and they've got kids in the car, somebody's jumping on their car or trying to break their window, you feel like your life is in danger. You
Yeah.
got to do what you got to do. I
Hmm.
understand that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So what do you think about what happened at the Capitol on January the 6th?
Um, for a while, I live on the other side of the country from where the capital is, right? So they're in Washington, D.C., and I'm literally as far away as I can get in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
And for a while, I kind of, before that even happened, before I even knew that that was going to happen or even saw that it happened, I kind of would jokingly say, maybe we should show up there. That's the best way that I could think of just, and not doing anything. I certainly didn't think of, maybe we should go in. I never thought of that. But I just thought, because they are trying to tell us that there's more Biden supporters than there are Trump supporters. And I thought, if we showed up there, we could blow them away with how many of us there are and then go home. Show up there, go home. That's it. So, but when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay. And then when I started seeing breaking into the Capitol, the violence, the fighting amongst ourselves, um the F Trumpers, I knew that something wasn't right. I definitely knew that something wasn't right, because it did not make sense to me. If they're truly all Trump supporters here and we are truly all here for the same reason, there's no reason for us to be fighting. And the behavior, I actually saw later on a video of a guy whose job it was to study and analyze the mob and riot behavior of terrorist organizations, of activist groups like BLM, Antifa, and he studied their tactics and the tactics of other organizations, and so that they could recognize them when they showed up. And he was there, and he would say, that's a tactic that they use, and that's a tactic that they use. And so he knew, at least was very suspicious, that there was a Antifa. I don't think I've heard of BLM being there, but he was suspicious of the presence of Antifa there. And when I heard that, it shocked me. I mean, it sort of shocked me, but not really. um I just couldn't believe that they would stoop to such levels. Yeah.
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 So when you heard Trump talk about we need to fight today, we need to do this, did you take it literally that people needed to physically go and take over the Capitol building?
I don't think taking it over and occupying it and entering that building was appropriate. But showing up, sitting on the doorstep, showing up and being there and saying we are here is more what I had in mind. But the defacement of property, the destruction, the breaking the windows
Yeah.
is frankly unacceptable, because that's our home base. That's hallowed ground as far as I'm concerned. As an American, I have been there. When I was a teenager, I actually went to DC, and I saw the um Washington, the Washington Monument. I saw all of that, and that was hallowed ground to me. So I don't agree at all with the going in and storming it at all. And it's kind of sad to me that happened. But sort of half seriously, half not seriously, I was kind of like, well, maybe we should show up there. And then when some of us actually did, I was like, dang. And my mom teaches at the elementary school in our town, and one of the teachers that she works with has a sister who went there and who showed up there. And she said, we were on this side of the building and we knew that there was something going on the other side of the building, and it was not us. Now that doesn't mean that there were no Trump supporters doing that, because Trump supporters have emotions too. You know, they could run a little hot too. So I'm not saying that it 100% wasn't us, but she knew that the side of the building that she was on was a lot calmer than the other side. And she also, you know, she knew that something wasn't right there too, because she said we were just chilling. We were just hanging out there, and then we were gonna leave. So I was kind of glad I wasn't there, because it looked like it got kind of hairy.
Yeah, and I understand that some of them were wanting to hang Vice President Pence. So and 5 people were killed that day. It's really
Yeah.
sad.
So I have actually heard about that once or twice. I haven't looked into it a whole lot, but I've heard a lot of accusations and talk about treason, and the recent actions that Pence has taken kind of begin to smack of treason, when he didn't support Trump with the I don't know if it was the Insurrection Act. I can't remember now because it's been a while, but some of the things that people have said are that he's kind of left them wanting, and that he turned his back on Trump when Trump needed him the most. And if that's true, if he is not working for America, if he is not working for Trump, if he is not working for the American people, if he has sold out, in my opinion, that could be considered treason. Now, should we go so far as to hang him? I don't think so, because that's a very serious accusation and a very serious punishment. However, I don't see treason any differently today than I did, than it would have been 200 years ago when this country was started. Look at Benedict Arnold. He betrayed Washington. He betrayed America, and he was defamed for it. He was shamed for it. So if there is treasonous things going on, I don't necessarily know as we should hang him, certainly not by a lynch mob. But there needs to be action taken. There needs to be discipline. Traitors should be put in jail, or, I hate to say it, put to death. We don't need people turning their backs on us, because we are at a very precarious state right now. We're in a very delicate situation, and the more people turn their backs on us, the worse it's going to get. So
I see that quite differently than you do.
Yeah.
There is a traitor, and that was Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Donald Trump betrayed our country. He incited the riot. He incited the insurrection. And he needs to be in jail, and he needs to be held accountable. So Pence didn't even have the authority to do what Trump wanted him to do. So,
I've heard that also.
Yeah. It's amazing that there can be such a difference of how people see that, isn't it?
Yes.
It amazes me.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sitting here hearing you say these things, and I'm thinking, how in the world can she see that like that. And of
Yeah.
course, you probably are saying the same thing about me, and
Mhm.
I don't understand
Yeah.
it. There's a
Yeah.
lot about it that makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
Do you still support Trump?
I do. I think that he has, while his some find his actions questionable, um, I do still think that he has the interest of America at heart, believe it or not, because he has seen what America can do for someone. With, yes, he got a loan. I believe he got a loan from his dad of like $1 million or $1 billion or whatever. He got a loan from his dad to start um his company, his enterprise, right? But it was up to him to keep it going. So the way I see it, um he was trying to give back what some of what America had given him, because it had given him the ability to become wealthy. He worked hard for it, and some of his actions previously, before he took the presidency, some find questionable, and that's okay too. No one is perfect. He's only human. But I still support him because I still believe that he's got um America's best interest at heart. And kind of going with what you said, with, you kind of think he should be in jail and held accountable. I 100% agree that even though he's the president, um he should, everyone should be held accountable for their actions, no matter who you are, even up to the office of president. If he does something that's blatantly um against constitution, like, things like that, which some say he has, um then yes, he should also be held accountable, because no one should be exempt. No one should be exempt, and that includes Pence, that includes Pelosi, that includes Ted Cruz. That, good or bad, whether you think someone is good or bad, there has to be a standard, even for the president. So I do agree with holding everyone accountable.
So where did you get your political views from? Your parents, or I mean, how did you get to be of the opinion that you are?
So being being raised kind of conservatively, I think had a hand in that. Um, I don't know if it's from my parents or not, because I have other siblings who, of the nine of us, I do have one or two siblings who are very far left, like like everything I've said, they would be almost the complete opposite of almost everything I've said. So I don't know if it necessarily comes from my parents. I think for me, it comes more from personality. I tend to be more of a literal realist person. I kind of take things as I see them, but also, um, my dad was, or is, a history buff. He made sure that, um, us kids got some pretty good foundation in history, whether, we moaned and groaned about it, but I'm actually kind of glad today. So looking back in history and looking at things that are happening today versus things that happened way back when, and things that didn't turn out so good back then that we're trying to repeat today. So I kind of think for me it's just more observation and my more literal character, literal personality. And also, being raised in a Christian home, being raised as a pastor's daughter and things like that. There's, you know, I have different views on abortion. I have different views on, this, that, and the other. So that could have something to do with it as well.
Yeah. See, and that's another thing that I really can't understand. I mean, I'm a Christian myself. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
legally ordained minister.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see anything even close to Christianity when it comes to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He seems more like Adolf Hitler than he does anybody else.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't understand Christians that seem to worship the ground he walks on. I
Hmm.
don't get that.
Hmm.
I do not get that.
Hmm.
Uh, so do you have political heroes?
Political heroes, such as
Like
like
what people in politics, past or present, do you think are really stand out to you as being great, as being worthy of praise and attention and
hmm.
accolades?
Yeah, okay. So as far as past, I mean, we have good ones today, but actually, starting with today, the I believe she's the governor of South Dakota. I do like her approach with just kind of taking the whole coronavirus thing. She's I don't see her as discounting it, as kind of, brushing it off and poo-pooing it, but I do like the fact that she is taking more of a hands-off approach and saying we can't make people bend to our will. We have to allow people to kind of choose for themselves. Now, there's things that we're going to have to kind of step in on, but we can't make people do mask mandates. We can't make people stay out of restaurants. We can't make people close down. That's not the government's job. So I do like that she says that. And I think partly why I like it is because being in Washington, we have been shut down this whole time. We have mask mandates, we have shutdowns, we have businesses that have closed. So I think it's just because of where I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum as far as that goes. So I do like that she's doing that. So I guess she's kind of my modern day hero, or one of them. But past, I think I would have to say um, the the founding fathers, Washington, Adams, those men who gave us the Constitution, who drafted the Declaration of Independence and started this country, got this country going. They had a vision that spanned so far, because there's things that they wrote in the Constitution and in the Declaration of Independence that are valid to this day and need to be upheld to this day. Because I've heard people say, "Oh, it was written so long ago. How it doesn't apply to today because it was written so long ago." Well, if we took everything like that based on how long ago it was written, be a lot of good stuff today that we need that would be obsolete. So the founding fathers, because without them there might not be an America as we know it today. I remember doing a book report on Abraham Lincoln when I was in, I don't know, fifth, maybe sixth grade, and just kind of reading about how he started, um, you know, his humble beginnings. I think he was, born in a log cabin and kind of came from uh, a more lower, on the lower rung family, and then worked his way up to being the presidency. So he shows me, as a kid, he showed me that anything is possible with hard work. Um, and he brought this country through the Civil War. He freed the slaves, which both of those things, there's didn't make people happy. And even today, there's people who, think the man was crazy. But so him, um, and let's see, I think those are the ones that kind of come to my head immediately.
Do you realize those founding fathers you just mentioned were rich, white men, slave owners?
Mm-hmm.
And everything they did and said was all about taking care of the rich white slave owners.
slaves.
And for many years, only the only people that could vote were rich white
Mhm.
men. You know all that, right?
Yep,
But they're
yep,
still heroes to you. I don't understand.
yeah. So simply because of their uh, giving us the ground rules that we have for today, um, their their persons, I can't really speak for because I don't know. I guess I should look into their characters a little bit more, but they gave us the rules that are supposed to kind of, keep the governments at bay. They walked away with the Declaration of Independence. They walked away from the King of Britain, who was, doing his thing, who was making life a little bit harder for people, and started things that took bravery, that took planning. Um, they realized that even though they had the status of being white rich slave owners, they still knew that there were people that could come after them. They still knew that he could have come after them, but they did what they did anyway. So the bravery, I don't agree with slavery. No human being has the right to own another human being. I don't agree with their owning of the slaves. Um, but I think as far as that goes, uh, we take things that are not that we take things that we don't have established as much today, and things that we see as taboo and bad today, and impose that on things that weren't taboo back then, even though they were still bad. Slavery is as bad then as it is today. But we take those kinds of things and superimpose the fact that it's not okay today, and that it's so much more spoken out against and so much more is known about it today, and we put it on um, back then. We take those feelings and we take that knowledge and put it uh, on them. It doesn't make it right. It still is not good that they owned slaves, um, but I think we kind of lose the distinction of that. And by extension, you could also say that something like disciplining children 20 years ago, you could spank your kid, you could put them in a timeout and things like that. Whereas today, I know people who, if you were to, if they were to see you spanking your child because he did something bad, and putting him in a timeout, they would call CPS on you because it's not okay today. Back then is it was all right, but it's not okay today. So there's things like that are kind of I don't know how to explain it. Our knowledge of things like that has changed, and so now it's become kind of a condemning someone for something that they may not have known, or that they may not have seen the same way back then.
So are you saying that because they had slaves back then, it was okay because that's the way that people believe?
It was still bad. Owning another human being is never okay. Um, but if we have to realize that just because the norm is the norm doesn't make it okay. Um, but because it was the norm, or may have been the norm back then, it doesn't mean that they were awful people. Um, I'm trying to think of another. I'm trying to think of a way to put it. Because it's again, it's kind of all how you see it. It's not, slavery is not good, but there's things okay, so this may be not a very good analogy. Women used to also wear corsets back then. Corsets aren't people. This has nothing to do with slavery, but women would wear corsets back then because it was the norm. It was the standard. It was a way of life. It was what you did. And it wasn't until later on with developments in simple things like fashion, developments in medicine, that they realized that wearing a corset for long periods of time, or sometimes even wearing a corset at all, would bend your rib cage, break your ribs, move your intestines up to your chest, and cause tons of problems. We know that today, but they may not have known that back then. They might have known that they were having problems, but they might not have linked it with something like a corset. So today, if we were to say, oh, corsets are terrible, people still wear corsets today. But if we were to say, oh, people who did that, back then, they were just terrible. Didn't they know what they were doing to their bodies? Well, the honest truth is no, maybe they didn't know. And I'm not saying that the founding fathers didn't know that slavery was bad. I'm just saying that they chose to keep those slaves, at least for a period. And while it may not have been the right choice, it was the choice they made nonetheless. So I don't know. They still did good things. Good people can do bad things, just like bad people can occasionally do good things, even if they don't mean to.
I'm speechless, Rachel, that you're defending people that tortured and enslaved and in many cases killed your ancestors. I don't
Mhm.
understand.
Mhm.
Uh,
It's it's an
if you,
interesting train of thought. I'll grant you.
if you would have been alive at that time, those founding fathers would not even have thought of you as human.
Hmm.
You realize that?
I do. It's
Okay.
an interesting train of thought. I
Yeah.
grant you.
So
um
where do you get your news? Do you get your news from TV, radio, the newspaper, internet, or all the above, or what?
um I do watch the news. I don't watch a whole lot of it. I do watch the news. Usually it comes when I do, I usually watch One America. I do scroll through MeWe, and they have some fairly good information on MeWe. I usually don't I don't go to Wikipedia, I don't go to stuff like that. But it's basically just kind of things that I hear or hear about. Um, and I'll check it out, and things like that. And there's things that will corroborate with each other. My mom will sometimes share articles with me from it's a platform called Second First, um, and things like that. So basically the news and a little bit of social media.
Do you read a lot?
I do. I like reading. Yes.
What do you mostly read?
I read some a little bit of philosophy. I've read Plutarch's Lives. I've read The Republic by Plato, but then I read Mark Twain. I read Mandy, Charles Dickens. I like Charles Dickens, so
The classics.
I do like classics. Yeah.
So what do you think about the present state of the world?
Um, the present state of the world. I mean, it could be better as always. It's easy to get bogged down in negativity, and it's easy to despair about some of the not so good things that are happening today. But it's also important to kind of look for the joy, some of the good things that are happening as well. Um and just kind of trying to leave it a better place. but it, everything, first rule of because my dad and I have had this conversation too. The first rule of thermodynamics is everything moves to disorder. So you can't take it too seriously that, it's all going downhill a little bit. I do wish that some people, I do wish that we could be better at, not just as a nation, but as the world. I do wish that we could be better at just kind of being willing to work together with each other on more things. I think that would make a big difference.
Yeah. Do you think the racism issue is getting better or worse?
Um, I I think it's possibly getting a little bit worse. I don't know if it's because I'm older now and I'm understanding it and I'm seeing it more than when I was younger or what, but I see it, kind of getting a little bit worse just
Do
with
you think systemic racism is a real thing?
um I I think so. It I mean it seems to be. It's people are beginning to divide things, based on, based more on race. You can't say a whole lot about someone or a group of people without someone who disagrees with the opinion or disagrees with the information saying it's racist or you're racist or things like that. And it's just it's a defense mechanism. Racism is a real thing. It's a very real thing, but it's not, um the way I see it is it's not what people are making it out to be. Just because you disagree with someone does not mean that you're against their race. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that's something that, I see is kind of getting a little bit worse. And in a way, it could go along with political correctness and standards, because I've seen, uh Adele, I don't know if you know who Adele is, was
Mhm.
recently criticized because she's a, beautiful white woman, and she was wearing her hair in a style that is more common to the beautiful Black women of Africa. And she was criticized for that because, well, you're white and that's a an African hairstyle, and you can't do that, and why are you appropriating that culture? And it's like, she's not being racist. She wanted to wear her hair that way. She's not trying to make a statement. She's not trying to speak out against it. She's not trying to necessarily say anything. I don't think. I could be wrong. I'm open to correction if I am wrong. But um so things like that, little things like that, are being nitpicked and being made about race. We are all There's many different races and many different nationalities in the world today, but we forget that we are all part of one race and we are all part of the human race. We all bleed red. So
That's a good message right there.
mhm,
I agree with you on that.
yeah.
So what else would you like people to know about you or your views before we wrap it up?
um let's see. I just think that lots of people are very heated and very opinionated right now, and that's good. Stand by your opinions. Don't be afraid to uh, stand up for people and do some digging and things like that. And uh, I think that as a nation, we have forgotten how to say the concept of saying, while I disagree with what you're saying, I defend to the death your right to say it.
Yeah.
So um I guess my message to people today would be be open-minded, and it's okay to have differing opinions. It's okay to have different views, because everyone does, everyone does. So yeah.
Well, it has been nice talking to you.
You
And I
too.
certainly appreciate you coming on, and
Yeah,
maybe we'll do it again sometime if you want to.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here, and you have a wonderful day. I will put this on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. I'll send you the links, and it'll be on Anchor and several other
Okay,
audio podcasts and my website. So thank,
wonderful.
thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.